The following is a presentation of the Helen Diller Family Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of California, San Francisco.
Good evening, everybody. If everybody could come on in and get settled. We have cameras rolling at 5, so we're going to start right on time. Okay, so welcome to the Cancer Center Nutrition Program's quarterly patient education event. We're so glad that you could join us tonight for this special program, the Cancer Fighting Kitchen. This is an event to benefit the Food for Life project, which you'll be hearing more about in a few minutes. And I also wanted to welcome all of you joining us on live stream. So my name is Greta Macaire, and I'm one of the oncology dietitian nutritionists here at the UCSF Cancer Center. And you will be able to view this, a recorded version of this program, which will be available in about 2 weeks on the UCSF Cancer Resource Center website. You can also visit the website for information about other nutrition events and supportive care services available through the UCSF Cancer Resource Center. So our program's going from 5 to 7 tonight. And for anybody that's here at the live event, just want to let you know the bathroom is right out the doors here on the right, down the hall, and to the left. And one of our speakers, Dr. Abrams, unfortunately, he has another event, so he has to leave a little bit early tonight. So after he gives his presentation, we'll allow about 10 minutes for questions, and then after his talk, and then let him get going. So, but for Rebecca, our other speaker, we're going to save time for questions at the end. So we ask that you please make note of any questions that you have during Rebecca's presentation, and then we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the event. We'll also be selling books through the gift shop outside after the event, and also selling other books or taking donations for other books for the Food for Life project also after the event outside. So now I'm thrilled to introduce our program and speakers for tonight. First, we're going to start off from hearing from Stephanie Stavrianidakis and Jessica Galloway about the Food for Life project that she started and Give the Breast Cancer the Boot and how you can support these programs. Then we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Donald Abrams about the science behind his nutrition prescription. A little bit more about Dr. Abrams. He's the Chief of Hematology Oncology Division at San Francisco General Hospital, an integrative oncologist at the UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Medicine and professor of clinical medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. He actually has too many accomplishments for me to list tonight, but I did want to mention that he has a particular passion in the field of nutrition and cancer, pretty much more than any other oncologist that I've ever known. So welcome, Dr. Abrams. He provides integrative medicine consultations to people living with and beyond cancer at the UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Medicine, and he co-edited an Oxford University Press textbook in Integrative Oncology with Andrew Weil, MD, which is now in its 2nd edition, and speaks about integrative oncology at conferences around the world. Our third presenter, who also needs no introduction, is Rebecca Katz. She'll be presenting her Cancer Fighting Kitchen culinary magic to us tonight. Rebecca is an accomplished chef and national speaker who has worked with the country's top wellness professionals and top patients and doctors at leading cancer centers about the powerful role of food in cancer care. She's a former senior chef and nutrition educator at Commonwealth's Cancer Help Program, executive chef emeritus for the renowned Food is Medicine professional training in medical nutrition therapy, and co-founder of Healing Kitchens, a company that helps people translate nutrition and culinary science to everyday plate through online and live courses, including the Cancer Fighting Kitchen course. She also consults for Dr. Andrew Weil's Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine premier nutrition conference for health professionals and is the author of several cookbooks. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Stephanie up to talk to us about the Food for Life program. So your presentation is up and you can just forward it that way. Yeah, just with that.
Okay, so Greta said my name right. That was awesome. And I'm really excited to be here, to be given this opportunity to shine light on a project that's very near and dear to my heart. And it's called the Food for Life. I'm calling it a movement now. And it gives it a great deal of credibility to be here with Rebecca Katz and Dr. Abrams, so thank you for sharing this with me. So just a little bit of background on me. I have been privileged to work here at UCSF for the last 17 years. I also grew up in a big Greek family who experienced life and love through food. So therein lies my passion for this topic, while nursing and cancer and lots of other very generous people provided the platform for this to happen. Some of you may recognize me as the nurse who administered your treatment, and some of you may recognize me as the person who sat beside you at the breast center. 6 years ago, I too became a patient here at UCSF. After receiving my treatment at our Ida Friend Infusion Center, I left emergency medicine and joined oncology medicine. Little did my unsuspecting new managers realize, but I was on a mission. I was on a mission to revamp that section that we all know about in every clinic and medical center that's got juice and crackers and these pink packets that we all know are really bad for us, and all kinds of other stuff that doesn't really serve us too well. So I knew from my experience in sitting in that chair that I needed something to nourish me while I was sitting there. And then that really translated to, I believe that something should be there to nourish all of us while we're sitting in those chairs. I felt really strongly that Greta and Dr. Abrams' teachings should be delivered to us and told to us at the infusion center. We should make that connection. And during the treatments, we as employees should seize those opportunities to teach you about healthier choices. So my management was absolutely supportive of this great idea and concept. However, there was no budget item for it. So I was given some potential grants, and Greta and Dr. Abrams and I all collaborated to submit the grants. But as I started to tell you earlier, I'm not very technically inclined, so I could not really put the grant together. So Greta was wonderful and helped do all of that. I couldn't have done it without her. Well, after we completed our grants, I never dreamed anyone would say no. And 2 for 2, we got turned down. So I'm not going to give up, though. And one day I'm randomly walking to work, and I run into my friend Chris Johnson. She happens to be a videographer. And she says to me, I can't believe I'm running into you today. She's really excited to see me, more than usual. And she said, I just got awarded this opportunity to shoot a video for Give Breast Cancer the Boot, and I want you to be in it. She said, you're a patient, you're a nurse, and you also work at the infusion center. It would tie it all together. It would be perfect. So I nervously said, oops, I just lost my page there. I nervously said, okay, I'll talk about it later, but let's see. So I leave her, I go to work, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I have to do this. Like, there has to be someone there that's going to believe in my idea. So now, I got to do technological stuff here. Okay. Fast forward to the interview. So one of the first people I meet at the interview is Jessica Galloway. Jessica not only was this kind and engaging soul, she also happens to have a profession in nursing, and she's a nurse practitioner. And her passion regarding paying it forward was really overwhelmingly obvious. She founded Give Breast Cancer the Boot in 2008, and through her foundation, she has raised over $2.2 million for cancer patients at UCSF and for research for breast cancer. So within moments of our meeting, I kind of knew she was my girl. I could not restrain myself. I had to tell her about my idea, and she was interested. So several months later, grant number 3 presented itself, and it was from Give Breast Cancer the Boot. So I stand here quite humbled with one more of these. Here's our wall. I stand here quite humbled at what this project has become. Jessica took a personal interest in this movement and rallied her friends in design and graphics. Many of my friends came forward to help, such as my dear friend Kate, who put together all of our presentations. And she's volunteered to be our tech girl, and she can put together some beautiful slideshows, and she's going to do some social media for us, too. So within these first 3 years that it took to actually get this project rolling, somehow, whatever I needed presented itself to me. People, and I mean people, literally came out of the woodwork to make this idea come to life. And it did. And here's what we do. So we have our big, huge, and happy wall. And this wall provides the tools to teach you, our patients, about food. The choices that serve you well, the substitutes for choices that don't serve you so well, and also teaching you about nourishing and healing aspects of what we can feed our bodies. When you're hanging out by our wall, you'll also find our library of cookbooks. And this will provide you with tons of interesting and delicious and cooking tips. People love the cookbooks. And then we also have our flyers. And these flyers are maintained by Greta's team. So Melissa and Lisa and Greta all have put together flyers for our patients that are specific and up to date to what's going on in the cancer community and to help you manage your side effects. And last but not least, we offer snacks. All of our snacks are sugar-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, and organic. Yes, Food for Life. Food for Life's sole reason for its existence is to educate patients and family members about the importance of nutrition. But our goal is to accomplish this in a fun and engaging way, and for you to not experience any guilt tripping. This is just all about learning and to have fun with. So I'd like to read just a few testimonials to you from some of our patients. I appreciated all of the healthy snacks and selection of teas while going through chemo. The book display is wonderful, and I borrowed the books and the cookbooks and took photos of the titles. I ordered 5 cookbooks on Amazon. You gave me the tools for my future. You literally are helping save my life and spend time with my son and hopefully my grandkids. Another one, I expected to be offered graham crackers and apple juice, but to my amazement, I was told of the new offerings. They were sugar-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, and organic. Bless you all at last for offering a healthy choice to patients. And here's the last one I'm going to read. To be offered such nourishment during this trying time is a blessing. The food and teas that have been created are healing to the body as well as to the heart and the soul. To be given such delicious morsels of healthy snacks and beverages when you are sick serves up a big dollop of hope. So there's more. We've actually now expanded. We got additional funding from Give Breast Cancer the Boot to expand to the breast clinic on the 2nd floor. So as you see, we're growing, and this growth is in direct response to your feedback. So we're super thrilled, but we started to struggle a little bit because we actually needed more resources. And as I needed more resources, Jessica put me in touch with Glassy Baby. And I don't know if any of you know who Glassy Baby is, but I'm failing on this thing. There we go, there's Glassy Baby. So, I don't know if you know who Glassy Baby is, but it's an amazing organization. And Glassy Baby began when the light of a candle in a hand-blown glass gave hope to Lee Rhodes. This hope helped her heal from cancer 3 times and inspired a business devoted to hope, beauty, kindness, and millions of dollars to help people, animals, and our planet heal. These people are serious about giving back, and they met with us, and they gave us enough money to hire a project manager. So we hired Jennifer Ingstrom to be our project manager to help us carry out our vision. So let's let Food for Life set the standard in all of our medical centers across the country. Thank you. And I do just want to bring up Jessica for one moment, because none of this would have happened without her. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I am also not technologically advanced, and I'm not as prepared as Stephanie is. But I just want to say a couple different things. Is that I've had breast cancer twice. I've sat in those chairs in the infusion center and was given graham crackers, and I was thinking that it was hot chocolate, but maybe it was actually apple cider. And I felt like for me, food was the key to me getting my health back. Not only did it heal my body, I also felt like it healed my mind and made me feel like I could actually be part of my treatment. So it was very empowering. When I met Stephanie, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, not only we just connected because we're both nurses and I believe so much in food. And what was the other thing that I wanted to say? I also hope that at some point that UCSF just absorbs this project and we don't have to do fundraising for it. It should be part of, every medical institution that healthy food is served. It's such an important thing. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to say is that the boot logo, so we change the boot logo every single year, and this year, or 2 years ago, it was a military boot, and it was because we did it in the Presidio at the old Army base. So it's not like a militaristic kind of thing. Anyway, thank you, Stephanie and Dawn, for everything, for making this happen.
Okay, so we have Dr. Abrams up next. And come on up. Thanks for being here.
Here he is. Thank you. And really, Stephanie deserves another round of applause for being such a catalyst at the infusion center, because for years, patients who I saw would come back to see me and say, how could you let them get away with serving what they served there? We are at a medical center where we serve our student doctors pizza and soft drinks for lunch, and they love it. So clearly there's a lack of education about what we should be eating. Fortunately, there's awareness now that dietary issues have replaced tobacco as the #1 cause of morbidity and mortality in the United States. From a large study published in JAMA 2 years ago, it's now clear that these dietary issues exceed tobacco smoking and don't take in physical inactivity or obesity, which are number 4 and 5 in their contributions to morbidity and mortality in this country. And in the article in JAMA, it didn't really tell you what the dietary issues were, so you had to go to another article referred to in Lancet. And there are 14 components of dietary risk, I think is what they called it. And I don't have them all memorized, but basically they are, the standard American diet. The bads are diets that are rich in saturated fats, sugar, red meat. And the goods are that we don't have enough fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. So that's why when I see my patients at the Osher Center, I really concentrate and focus my conversation and consultation on what to eat. Because during my fellowship with the program at the University of Arizona, Andrew Weil's program in integrative medicine, that was the first education I really had about nutrition, except for what I get from my husband, who was a macrobiotic chef, who I've been with for 23 years, and 10 years after we were together is when I did my fellowship, and I would read in these books, and I say, oh my God, you're right. And he said, I know, I told you. So it really is something that I feel very strongly about, and I personally believe that it does make a difference. Many people go to their oncologist and say, what should I eat? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. Eat what you want to eat. That is not correct. And I'm not faulting my colleagues, the other oncologists that I work with, because everybody needs to keep up with their organ. Breast, colon, pancreas, everything changes so quickly, and we're at this exploding revolution in cancer treatment that it's impossible to maintain awareness about everything. So I think the default mechanism now is when somebody says, what should I eat? The oncologist says, go see Donald. And that's how I keep pretty busy. So what I do at the Osher Center is I see people in consultation. I don't treat their cancer. I treat cancer at San Francisco General. And at the Osher Center, I say I treat people living with cancer. And I tell them that cancer is like a weed, and somebody else is taking care of your weed, and it's my job to work with the garden and make the soil as inhospitable as possible to growth and spread of the weed. And I do that by looking to see how they're fertilizing the garden. That is, what they eat and what supplements they take. And it's my belief that as much as possible, there are a lot of named diets out there. I'm sure you've heard of the alkaline diet and the Budwig and the paleo and the ketogenic. I don't believe in named diets personally. I think the diet should be organic, plant-based, antioxidant-rich, anti-inflammatory, whole foods. So starting back to front, I say whole foods not because I'm advertising for a supermarket chain, but because I see a lot of people say, I have cancer, so I'm going to juice everything. Or I have cancer, so I'm going to sprinkle broccoli powder in a smoothie. I think it's always better to eat the whole foods. Inflammation, when you cut yourself or when you have surgery, when it heals, it gets red, hot, tender, and swollen. That's inflammation. It's part of normal healing. But when that goes on inside of us without provocation, leads to degenerative diseases of aging, such as dementia, heart disease, and cancer. And there's much that we can do by what we eat and what we don't eat that impacts inflammation. And we'll talk about that more, and Rebecca will show you how to make delicious anti-inflammatory foods. Oxygen is two molecules linked together. That's what we breathe. That's how we live. But when those oxygen molecules separate, they create so-called free radicals, or reactive oxygen species, which knock into our DNA, causing damage, leading to aging or cancer. Antioxidants take those free radicals out of circulation so they don't do damage. Turns out most foods that are rich in antioxidants are plants. Animal products are not a great source of antioxidants. That's why I say the diet should be plant-based. I don't think we need to be vegetarian or vegan or raw, but we need to have at least 2.5 cups of fruits and vegetables each day, more vegetables than fruits. And as much as possible, I think they should all be organic. And that's not just to avoid herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers, which are chemicals that we don't need in our body. It's because a plant that's grown outdoors organically needs to fight to protect itself from other plants, birds and insects, and the sunshine. And the only way a plant knows how to protect itself is by making chemicals. Turns out those chemicals that the plant makes are the ones that benefit us. So if we're going to let food be our medicine and medicine be our food, organic is more potent than conventional. They've done studies, the Brits do a lot of studies trying to prove that there's no difference if you shop organic or conventional. And they look at the macronutrients, the fat, the protein, and the carbohydrates, and they say those are similar whether something is grown organic or not. But it's the phytonutrients, the micronutrients that are different. And they even report that. And those are the things that are most beneficial to our health. So we have a fabulous array of food, and it's quite heavy on my favorite food group, which are the cruciferous vegetables. Flowers grow in the shape of a crucifix, hence cruciferous. These, I think we can never get enough cruciferous vegetables. I believe they have the most potent cancer risk reducing chemicals of any of the foods that we eat. So when I say cruciferous vegetables, what pops into your mind is broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. But there are also cruciferous roots and green leafies that are cruciferous, and I see a few out here on the table. So cabbage, collard greens, kale, bok choy, arugula. These all contain a number of really potent chemicals. So potent that, in fact, we started to extract these chemicals, the sulforaphanes, from cruciferous vegetables, and they've done a study in men with prostate cancer, looking at it as chemotherapy. I say eat broccoli. I think it's better than extracting the active chemicals and putting them in a capsule. The other thing that cruciferous vegetables have is something called DIM, which changes estrogen from the type that fuels estrogen estrogen-driven tumors to the type that doesn't. So again, particularly for women with breast and uterine cancer and other cancers that are driven by estrogen, cruciferous vegetables are important. I always tell my patients, you know, if we have to have 5 to 9 serving of fruits and vegetables each day, more vegetables than fruits, we need to eat vegetables in the morning. And my standard breakfast is usually broccoli, tofu, and rice. Or my other breakfast used to be mochi, which is just pounded rice that you puff up in the oven, smear almond butter, and put a sweet potato on top of it. And I say it used to be mochi because the company that makes mochi in the East Bay just went out of business. And now I don't know what to eat for breakfast. So I mentioned tofu, and we have some edamame here on the table. Soy, very misunderstood by many people, especially my patients with breast cancer, especially women who have estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. Because soy contains chemicals, isoflavones, that are phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. So people get concerned that, especially if they have estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, they should avoid soy. But in fact, these estrogens are much weaker than a woman's own estrogen. And in fact, it's because Asians living in Asia eat a lot of soy that Asians living in Asia eating an Asian diet, or what used to be the Asian diet before it's become more westernized, had lower rates of both breast and prostate cancer. Exposure to soy during those adolescent years when you're having surges in hormones really seems to protect men and women in later life from developing both breast and prostate cancer. So with breast cancer, we know from a large study that was done at Kaiser in Oakland and duplicated in Shanghai, China, that women with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer who eat a portion of a whole soy food a day have lower rates of recurrence of their breast cancer, even if they're taking tamoxifen, which also behaves similarly to soy. So we don't need to be afraid of soy. And it seems to also benefit men with prostate cancer. But when I say soy, I mean whole soy foods: soybean, soy milk, tofu, tempeh, miso, and not soy cheese, soy turkey, and soy hot dogs, because those are just heavily processed soy foods. So sweet potatoes, they're not yams. I fight with Whole Foods every time I go in there because they label them yams. Yams are basically something in Africa that are much weirder looking than a sweet potato. So all those things that they're calling yams are not really yams, but they're really good for you. Much better, of course, than white potatoes. And people always tell me in the winter what a good tan I have. And I actually show them that I'm not particularly tan, that I'm actually keratinic, because it's the beta carotene in the sweet potatoes, the carrots, the squash, that give it the orange-yellow colors, and that is a very potent anti-cancer chemical as well. Now, I will not take a multivitamin because they contain beta carotene in a supplement form. Beta carotene is a vitamin A precursor. And the reason I won't do it is to come out, I used to smoke cigarettes. And a large study done in Europe that was reproduced elsewhere with groups of 30,000 cigarette smokers suggests that beta carotene actually increases the risk of lung cancer. So I will eat beta carotene until I'm keratinemic, but I won't take a supplement because I think nature gave it to us better and it's safer. So we're going to have a dish. The soup, I believe, is a sweet potato soup or the carrot soup. The carrot soup, you got sweet potatoes and the sweet potatoes and kale. I mean, what could be more perfect? Cruciferous and orange yellow. I see a lot of patients who say, I eat a lot of vegetables, I eat salad. I don't think a routine salad, lettuce, cucumber, and celery, is really the most potent food because those are mainly water with a little bit of vitamin C. And then people tend to slice white button mushrooms and throw them in a salad raw. All mushrooms need to be cooked. White button mushrooms contain a cancer-causing compound. So white buttons, their brown cousins, the crimini, and their giant cousins, the portobello, all should be cooked. They may contain some aromatase inhibitor activity. So again, useful for women with breast cancer, but they do need to be cooked. Better mushrooms, I think, that are edible, shiitake, maitake, and enoki, the Asian mushrooms, because they are immune-enhancing and may have some anti-cancer activity. So mushrooms are good. Season with ginger, garlic, onions, and turmeric. I'm sure many of you have heard about turmeric being a really potent anti-cancer spice. The first I ever heard about turmeric was at our conventional American Society of Clinical Oncology meeting about 10 years ago. Investigators from Ohio State have a mouse model of colon cancer where the mice are genetically programmed to develop colon cancer. And if they fed these mice a diet enriched in turmeric, not only did they not develop colon cancer, but they survived longer than the control group. So turmeric works because it doesn't really get absorbed very well from our intestinal tract. so it gets down to the colon where it can do its cancer prevention activity. A lot of people like to take turmeric as an anti-inflammatory and as a general anti-cancer and not just have it stay in their colon. To do that, it has to be, turmeric has to be, or the curcumin, which is the active component, needs to be modified in a way that it's more easily absorbed, or taken with black pepper. Because black pepper increases the absorption of turmeric 1,000-fold from the gastrointestinal tract. And black pepper also increases the absorption of other things as well. I think I see some black pepper on the table. Yeah, okay. I mentioned rice, that I eat that for breakfast. Actually, I'm problematic for that too because I do broccoli, tofu, and rice with a soy-based mayonnaise, which also is suddenly off the market. So I think it's the Russians. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, brown rice is better than white rice, but if you like white rice, jasmine and basmati are good, and millet and quinoa are also good grains. And I recognize quinoa because it looks like alpaca, I always think. So bread should be whole grain, not whole wheat. Checking out of the supermarket the other day, I was standing in the line next to the whole grain breads, and I was a little shocked when I took some off the shelf and looked at their ingredients because they have a lot of sugar. And those of you that know me know that I'm pretty much anti-sugar. When I discuss cancer risk-reducing guidelines, what I use is the American Institute for Cancer Research World Cancer Research Fund guidelines, which are actually guidelines for reducing the risk of cancer. But number 10 says for cancer survivors, follow the 9 guidelines above. And number 1 is to be as lean as possible without being underweight. And number 2 is to be physically active for 30 minutes each day. And number 3 is the first that says anything about food, and it says avoid sugary drinks. So they change that. They update these guidelines every 10 years, and they're due to do it this year. But in 2007, when they changed it to avoid sugary drinks, I went to the microphone in Bethesda, and I said, there are sugary drinks and there are sugary drinks. You can drink a cola beverage, God forbid, or a fruit punch, which is probably glucose and high fructose corn syrup, or you can squeeze 3 oranges in the morning. And the response from the podium was, energetically, they're all the same. Because if you eat an orange, the fiber slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. If you squeeze the sugar away from the fiber, it's like drinking a Coca-Cola. Whoops, I shouldn't say brand names, I'll get sued. Anyway, scratch that. So does it mean I don't squeeze my 3 oranges? I used to do it every day, now I just do it twice a week. But why is that bad? When the body sees sugar, it responds with insulin and insulin-like growth factor, both of which promote inflammation, and the growth factor is a growth factor for cancer cells, such that we're even now looking at blocking insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor as a treatment for a number of cancers, including estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So sugar, I tell patients, if you're looking at a package of a food that comes in a package, it's okay to have sugars in the nutrition facts box because that sugar fuels our brain. Where I don't want to see sugar, and a nickname for sugar is in the ingredients list. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use a sweetener. Stevia, Andy Weil says, is the best because it's natural. He used to also be in favor of agave nectar, but I think a lot of that is unregulated and coming from, may be contaminated with high fructose corn syrup and probably is best to avoid except in small doses. I eat a date, if I want something, or raisins, dried fruit, because the sugar is attached to the fiber. Now, for Thanksgiving and Christmas, when Clint cooks a sweet potato pie, he uses grade B maple syrup, because that is a relatively unprocessed sweetener. So we don't do it every day, but actually now that we don't know what to eat for breakfast, he puts a little maple syrup in his oatmeal, but I'm fine with just a few nuts. Nuts. I saw nuts too, yeah. 2 weeks ago, there was an article that nuts decrease the risk of lung cancer. Well, yahoo. I mean, that's my snack. Popcorn, I had 2 bags of the plain popcorn that they sell downstairs right before this event, but my other snack is nuts. And nuts Very good. Oils and also other chemicals that seem in the test tube to decrease cancer cell activity. So walnuts, almonds, pecans, even peanuts. People think peanuts are bad, but I don't think they're bad. And, I mentioned that I put almond butter on my mochi when I used to have mochi, but it's not an almond butter in a can. I had to go to the grocery and I pour it, I push the button and the almonds get ground up and I just take it like that. So those are good foods. I didn't mention any meats at all, and there's no meat on the table. The number 5 got number 4, which I've already waxed eloquently on, says eat more of a variety of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And number 5 says limit consumption of red meat, beef, pork, and lamb, and avoid processed meats. And avoid is a pretty big word, and that's bacon, salami, bologna, hot dogs, anything that's put on a pizza, really, is a processed meat. So I think with that, I've gone through a quick review of what's good to eat, and Rebecca's going to show us how to make it yum, because that's what she is, the mistress or master of yum, whatever. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions at this point in time if you have any. Yes? For my breakfast?
We actually have somebody that can come around and get the question on a microphone so that the live stream can hear it.
I need to have that. Thank you. When I travel, what I do is I get muesli, because that's unsweetened, and then I take rice dream when I travel. But, with TSA now not letting you have anything bigger than 3 ounces, they always want me to open my 8-ounce rice dreams. I said, well, what's the point? How am I going to use it if I open it? Anyway.
Well, so inspired by OSHER and UCSF, I've been on the hunt post-surgery for foods, and one of the things I absolutely love is bread. And breakfast has been the biggest conundrum. What am I going to have for breakfast? So finally, I discovered a seed and nut-based bread that's made at the mill right down the street.
Oh, yeah?
And it has, other than that, it has oats. And it's a little loaf of bread, and it's all predominantly nuts and seeds.
Huh.
And it's wonderful. So I have it in the morning with avocado, tahini, and greens.
Nice.
The other thing that was suggested to me by a friend is taking a sweet potato, slicing it up, and toasting it, and then using that to layer things on. So those are my 2 suggestions.
Very good. Thank you for those tips. Yeah, I actually got an email from a friend/patient today who said she heard the guy who works for some company on the radio today saying Ezekiel bread you shouldn't eat because sprouted things are dangerous. And I said, I don't think so. No, we don't think so. We think they have higher concentration of good things because sprouts need those to live and survive. Question?
So I heard you say about all mushrooms need to be cooked. That includes maitake and shiitake.
Yes.
And what about supplement yeah?
Yes.
And even in supplement formula, you should make sure they're not raw, like oriental mushrooms.
They aren't usually raw when they're in a supplement like that.
So that's okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Pass it to her over there.
You've mentioned certain types of food related to some specific types of cancer. Is there a resource we can turn to so that we can kind of look at my cancer and what specific things might apply to that?
David Servan-Shriver in his book Anti-Cancer tries to do that, but I'm not sure what that's based on, actually. I like the book Foods That Fight Cancer by Richard Beliveau, but it, again, doesn't address, it to an extent does what you're wanting to do, but it's not chapter by chapter, it's food by food. Again, what I say is that I'm not working with the weed particularly, but with the garden and making the soil as inhospitable as possible to growth and spread of the weeds. So these things can be cross-cutting across different types of cancers.
Yeah, I have a question about the soy again. This has been, 10 years ago I had breast cancer and I just got it a couple years ago, so I'm still in treatment. But I've had a really good diet, and I was eating tofu all the time, and my friends and sister-in-law told me not to do it anymore, and then I heard recently that it causes inflammation, and maybe that's old news. I just wanted some clarification on, because I think it's great, but I don't want to do anything really. Does it depend on the person?
Well, there are, soy, probably you can discuss equal and those metabolizers better than I can, but the way people manage soy is a genetic thing. So even cruciferous vegetables may not benefit all people the same way. I think most of the fear about soy is about GMO, that so much soy is genetically modified, and I'm not sure how much I buy into the danger or risk of eating genetically modified food, but I think that the data supports that soy is beneficial for women with breast cancer. Do you want to make a comment about equal or
Well, I just think you're
for
right.
the microphone?
Yeah. There are some genetic differences that are kind of beyond the scope of tonight's presentation, and some different cultures, metabolize soy differently. But I think sometimes people say that soy is inflammatory because if certain people are sensitive to soy, anything you eat that you're allergic to, and soy is one of the top 8 allergens, I believe. Anything you eat that you're allergic to is going to potentially increase inflammation in the body. So for people that are sensitive to it or have an allergy to it, then that's maybe inflammatory. That's what
Good. I realize I didn't say much about fruit. I mainly spoke about vegetables. So I do oranges, as I mentioned. It's better to eat the orange, but I juice it. And I know Rebecca likes the citric, the chemical in particularly the peel, the rind. And there is modified citrus pectin seems to be something that a lot of people believe reduces the risk of cancer metastases. So citrus is well represented here. My other favorite, of course, are the heavily pigmented fruits, the berries, blueberry, blackberry, red. Now, they must be organic because they're like sponges for toxins. When they're out of season, they can be frozen because they only lose about 10% of their nutritional value, in contrast to vegetables that are frozen that lose a lot more. So my dogs won't go to sleep at night until they eat a handful of blueberries. I do eat my whole apple every day except for the stem. I don't believe much in homeopathy, but in homeopathy they say take a little bit every day of what you're trying to avoid, and apple seeds are cyanide, which is death. And the Queen Mum ate her whole apple every day and lived to be 103. I don't think ancient men threw out their apple core, their pear core. Similarly, when you eat a grape with seeds, that bitterness in the grape seed, that's the grape trying to protect itself from a predator. And we now know that grape seed is good for breast, prostate, and colon cancer. So if you're eating grapes, red with skin and seed, and if you're drinking alcohol, red wine would be the preferred beverage. Now, just in closing, cheers, the guideline number 6 says, if consumed at all, limit alcohol to 2 a day for men and 1 a day for women. And to me, that's the hardest recommendation to get my head around, because if at all versus 2 a day seems like really dichotomous. I can't drink that much alcohol anymore in a week even, so maybe I'm a wussy. But, especially women at risk for breast cancer, I recommend 1 alcoholic beverage a week is probably best, because there is a linear relationship between intake of alcohol and risk of estrogen receptor positive postmenopausal breast cancer. I want to save room for Rebecca here. Yes?
2 quick questions about eggs.
Eggs.
One, when we think of eggs, we think of chicken eggs. What's your take on that? Secondly, I've been told that duck eggs are less inflammatory than chicken eggs. What's your take on that?
So that's a good question. So chicken and eggs, according to Andy Weil in his book Healthy Aging, he says that they're some of the most inflammation-promoting foods out there. Not only because of what we feed them, so they're very rich in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation, as opposed to omega-3s, but they're a rich source of arachidonic acid, which are the chemical precursors to prostaglandins, the mediators of inflammation. So poultry and eggs should be organic, and eggs should be organic omega-3 eggs, I think. Personally, I can only eat 1 egg a year at Passover when we dip it in salt water, because I get a bad sulfur reaction, if you know what I mean, from eggs. So do I know if duck eggs are less inflammatory than, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. All right, let's turn it over to Rebecca. Thank you all for your attention, and bon appetit.
Thank you, Dr. Abrams. That was a great presentation. And now I invite Rebecca Katz to come on up, and she has an assistant with her, and I'd like to introduce her as well. So, or maybe Rebecca can introduce her. So come on up, ladies.
So, welcome to the Yum Station up here. And with me is my dear colleague, Karen Dombroni. And Karen is a private chef in Marin County, and she does a tremendous amount of work with cancer patients. And we've known each other for quite some time, so she's my cooking buddy. I always like to cook with other people. So she's it tonight, and she's also here to wrangle me, to make sure that I stay on task. So we have a plethora of everything that Dr. Abrams talked about tonight in our little kitchen here. And the one thing I'm going to say as I turn on my stove is that it's one thing to have food that is healthy, but I believe in what I call the power of yum, where great taste and great nutrition sit together side by side. Never going to want to like eat quote unquote healthy if your taste buds aren't turned on and you have what I call the involuntary spasm of vocal delight, which is And so today we're going to teach you how to get to yum and how to take everything that Dr. Abrams has talked about and translate it to the plate. And when we translate it to the plate and it tastes good and we feel kind of that sense of joy and empowerment that food can give us. And then we tend to have a healthier connection with food because it's something that is nourishing us versus being something that's like, ugh, I'm eating this because I'm supposed to be, but I really can't stand it. So you'll see some of you will probably come up and you're going to be guinea pigs for me up here. We're not just going to stand up here by ourselves. So don't do this at home, but I can because I have asbestos hands. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to saute some kale. And I've heated up my pan, and I heat my pan first, right? And then I put my olive oil in. And I do this, and it's getting nice and shimmery. I do this so that as soon as I put I'm going to put some ginger in here. As soon as I put food in here, the smoke point drops, right? So people get very nervous about cooking with olive oil, and it's all about just moderating your heat. So if you heat the pan first, then you put your olive oil in, then you're not heating up the olive oil. You're just putting it in, and it won't get smoky. And that's when we have a problem. And you all are not going to be cooking on these big butane, huge stoves like restaurants that are like 50,000 BTUs. You're cooking on, smaller ranges and smaller stove tops. So you really don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to take this well, actually, before I do that, I'm going to take these sweet potatoes. And so we've got our orange. And one of the things that you're going to notice is that all of the food that we're cooking is very colorful, which is a sign of health. So food and color, if you see something that's really colorful, and I'm not talking about jujubes or, gummy bears or Swedish fish, I'm just, candy, I'm talking about real food, then you know it's healthy. Now, we're going to talk about a very my little acronym, and you all have cards, and you all have the recipes that we're cooking today. But one of the things, my tricks to getting to yum, is an acronym that I have coined, and it's called FASS. F-A-S-S. It's like we memorize it, right? And so you can see, and F stands for fat. And so in here, I've got my olive oil. Now, fat is like a little magic carpet that transverses the taste buds like a magic carpet like ride. It's like a taxi cab that makes multiple stops. It's what satiates us, right? And in this case, what the fat is doing in this dish is we've got this big pile of kale that we're going to put in here, right? And kale, in addition to having all those powerful antioxidants and phytonutrients, is also a really good source of vitamin A and K, which are fat-soluble vitamins. So in order to make the kale more absorbable in our body, we get the benefit of the fat that goes along with it. And the other thing that the fat does is it takes a little bit of that bittery taste out of the kale. So, you know, fat is that thing that makes us feel like satiated versus kind of like things being sort of, do people remember the fat-free days, right? When everything just looked so bland, everything was bland, everything was like cardboard. You could never eat enough snack wells, right? Because there was no fat to satiate. So fat, right? And then what I'm about to do now is I'm going to add some salt. And I'm adding a little bit of salt to these sweet potatoes because I want to bring out their natural sweetness, okay? So salt acts like a little scrubbing bubble that actually goes in, it kind of breaks through the just the little molecular structure of the food and gets in there and brings out the real flavor. So this is very different than looking at the sodium count or processed sodium that you see in processed foods, because this food is whole foods, and it needs to be seasoned. It needs to be seasoned, and salt plays a very important role in how we perceive taste. So if it tends to move flavor from the back of the palate, back here, to the front of the palate, which is here. That's where the yum button is, right at the front of the palate. So you'll see, because you all are going to be like involved in some participatory activities that'll show this in action. So I'm just going to saute these sweet potatoes here. I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit more. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of cinnamon. And now I am a big spice person. And Dr. Abrams talked about turmeric, but they're also like the spices of all kinds: cumin, coriander, cinnamon, ginger. These are all anti-inflammatory spices and all have, you know, we don't think about spices having antioxidants, but they do, right? So, and cinnamon also acts as a blood sugar regulator, but it also does something very interesting on the palate. It's kind of mimics kind of like a sweet, rounded flavor. So when you think of cinnamon, I don't know, I think of like smelling cinnamon, I think of apples and cinnamon and applesauce and apple pie and what? And Christmas. Exactly. I think of the season. I think of it as very warming. Like chai tea has a lot of cinnamon in it. It's so in cooking, it's that thing, like it just adds a little something in here. So I'm always looking for as much something as I can get, right? So I'm just going to add a little bit of my little, how many people have heard, ooh, that's the sound of cooking. That sizzle means there's something going on in the pan. So how many people have heard of the magic mineral broth? The magic mineral broth. Okay, so the magic mineral broth is a broth that I created, I think it was in 2000. And it is a very alchemical, it's the best word I can use. It's called the magic mineral broth. It's very alchemical, but it's got all of the foods that Dr. Abrams pretty much has talked about. A vegetable-based broth that has, in addition to carrots, celery, onion, leek, parsley, kombu, which is a seaweed, it's a kelp, which has a lot of umami, which is that savoriness in food that we kind of crave. And it's got sweet potatoes and garlic and allspice berries. And anyway, you have the recipe right in front of you. But it's very nutrient dense and it's very rich in mineral content. And people I use it for the base of soups, which we're going to get to a bit later. But I also use it when I'm cooking, maybe to what I just did, deglaze a pan. But a lot of people use it as like a sipping tea. So especially if you're not feeling great and you're not feeling like in the mood to eat, it's just a very soothing kind of cup of nourishment. So I have my sweet potatoes going now, and now I'm going to take this huge, like Mount Vesuvius thing of kale. And now you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of kale, truly. And I'm also going to add some raisins because I want to add something sweet. So that's one of our S's in fast, is sweet. And kale can be a bit bitter. So, and now I'm going to add just another little pinch of salt in here because, again, I've added a new character to the pan. So anytime I add a new food, I want to give it a little pinch of salt so all that natural flavor comes out. I'm going to get out the magic tongs. Okay. And I'm going to use a little bit more liquid in here. So now we've got some action going on. And if I really wanted to be brave, I would flip the pan, which I'll do in a second, just so you know that I went to culinary school and I can do it. Oh, a sweet potato on the loose. Okay. So look how pretty this is getting. So you guys, can you guys see? Okay, hang on. I'm gonna prop this up so you can see. It's too pretty. Now, see all that kale that looked like Mount Vesuvius, and you thought, oh my God, how could anybody eat all of it? Look how it's cooked down, and look how fast it's cooked. So this is our kale and sweet potatoes. Now, if I had a little bit more, now I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to add the other part of fast, which is acid. So I could use lemon, in this dish, or I could use orange in this dish. So let me explain what it's going to do. So acid is like a little animated character, right? And what it does is it does a couple of things. First of all, remember I was talking about kale being a little bit bitter, right? So what the acid will do is it will, again, take away a little bit of the bitterness of the kale, okay? It'll also brighten up the flavors. And you're going to see I'm going to do this over and over with every dish I do tonight. You're going to be like, oh, my God, here she goes again. But so in this case, right, I could use a little bit of lemon juice to perk this up and get rid of a little bit of the bitterness of the kale. But I could also, if I wanted, use a little bit, because we live in California, a little bit of blood orange. So who's voting? Lemon? Lemon or orange? I'm sorry, I got the oranges first. I'm sorry. We're going to use orange for this one, but we'll use it. I promise. Okay. So, and look how beautiful this is. Hang on. So I'm just going to sprinkles. Oh my gosh. I'm going to sprinkle some of this. Thank you. And then, I'm going to just add the rest of these. You know, Dr. Abrams was talking about 2.5 cups a day of fruits and vegetables, preferably vegetables, right? So I want to explain kind of what that looks like. Hang on. Thank you. The pièce de résistance is some pecans. Okay, so I'm here, right? So here we've got this cruciferous vegetable, and we've got sweet potatoes, and we've got ginger in here, and we've got pecans, and we've got olive oil. We've got like every anti-inflammatory food, not on the planet, but a lot in this one dish. So if you were to eat half of this, right, maybe with like a little bit of protein with it, okay, you could top it with just about anything. That's like that you're halfway home, you know? So it's when we think about plant-based, okay, it's like, let's say this was a platter for 2 people, right? And I garnished it with a little bit of protein. But the plate, I always say paint your plate green, but this is how like a plant-based plate would look, right? If I divided it in half and then I had some protein in it, maybe a little bit of green, okay? So I've got a lot going on. So do I have anybody who will come up and taste this and attest to whether this is yum or not? Okay, come on down. Okay. Come on down. This is like The Price is Right. The food is right or it's not. Okay, did you hear that? Right, and you said crunchy. Right, so this is another thing, right? So it's not just, right, about like, oh, kale, right? It's about creating all these different textures, right? You've got the chewiness of, look at her. So you've got the chewiness of the raisins, you've got the crunchy of the nut, you've got kind of the kale that's got its little thing going, you've got sort of the softness of the sweet potatoes, which could have used a little longer to cook, but you've got a lot going on, a lot of interest. So if you've got the heat of the ginger, so, and you've got the kind of little tanginess of the blood orange. So the whole idea is that your taste buds are interested, right? So she's still eating it. I mean, she loves kale, but she's still eating. So that's kind of the idea, is that, so we want to keep our taste buds engaged. That's the trick. So I'm going to put this soup on, and Karen's going to be the soup watcher, right? So we don't burn it in front of you. And the next thing that we've got on the hit parade is a salad that is an arugula salad. So arugula we're coming into arugula season now. I mean, you can pretty much get it all year round. But arugula is a cruciferous vegetable. So let's say kale's not your thing. Or let's say you want to get cruciferous food into your world, but you think, God, I like arugula. It's kind of a little spicy green. You can buy this. You can buy these in bags already washed and cleaned. So all you have to do is dump. And I'm going to do kind of like a little cilantro lime vinaigrette. And one of the things that I would like people to think about is where you can really make a good start in shifting your diet is making your own salad dressing. So there are two ways you can do it. You can take your olive oil and your acid, and this is lime juice, and this is olive oil, and you put it all together, you shake it up with a little bit of salt and pepper, and you've got salad dressing. Or let's say you're doing, and it'll last for 2 weeks in your refrigerator, or let's say you're like on the fly, or you're bringing like a little composed salad to work, or whatever. You can literally make it in a bowl. So I am going to take, actually, I lied. I'm going to take my acid first, okay? And I'm just going to, this is probably about about a tablespoon, 2 4?
It's about 3 and
Ooh, okay. Good to know. Yeah. Hang on. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. I'm going to have somebody come up here and taste this, and I don't want them to go. Okay. You know when you have too much, like. Okay. So when I make salad dressing, I put my acid in the bowl first, or in a jar first, and then I take a pinch of sea salt and I put it in with the acid. And what happens is now I'm giving the salt a place to dissolve, right? And it also, salt and acid do an interesting thing. They do a little dance. If you've ever oversalted something, just squeeze some lemon or lime over it and we'll erase that like kind of over acidic taste, okay? So now I've got my salt in here. I'm going to put in a little bit, actually I'm going to use a little bit of cayenne pepper in here, just a teeny bit, okay? And I'm going to use some cumin. And you don't have to do this. You don't, it's like, even if you just had lemon juice and olive oil, you'd be so Mediterranean. I'm just dialing it up a little bit because again, every time I use a spice, I'm adding more nutrient density and more yum factor. Okay, so I've got this going on in my bowl, and then I'm just going to take some olive oil, and then I don't even have a whisk. I'm just I'm creating a whisk. There's the salad dressing. I haven't messed up anything, right? And if I were at home, I'd just be squeezing the lime into the bowl. I wouldn't have a jar or anything. So I've got that going, and then I'm going to add some arugula. And I'm going to add some radish. And this is another powerful food. And it's peppery. And then I'm going to add a little bit, actually, of edamame. So this is where we were having the whole food discussion about edamame. And when I was talking with Dr. Abrams about what he would like me to make, since we've done this a lot together, and he said, could you please do something with edamame? And I said, sure, I've got 2 recipes. So anyway, I'm going to just give these edamame beans a little spa treatment. So I'm going to put a little bit of acid in there and a teeny bit, okay, just a teeny bit of salt, just a teeny little pinch. And I'm going to throw them in. And I'm going to put some cilantro in here, which is another herbs next to spices. Herbs are it. Tons of phytochemicals in those herbs, right? And now I'm going to take this avocado. So now you get to see me use a knife. Uh-oh. Okay. So I'm going to take this avocado. So what do I have in my salad? I've got fat. I've got acid. I've got salt. I don't really have sweet in here. So again, I'm sort of cheating. I'm taking the avocado and I'm cutting it inside its skin, like that, across, and then I kind of go around. And voila. So I've got avocado. And now I'm going to toss this together. This might need some help. And in fact, I'm going to taste it first. So one of the things that I think is really good to have, or what I call anytime foods, right? So this is an edamame spread, and this is just another way to use edamame, right? So what we did here was we literally in a food processor put edamame beans, right, and some lime juice and avocado and wasabi. This is the wasabi. And wasabi is a cruciferous, it's part of the cruciferous family, right? So again, it's like getting in those cruciferouses in there. So anyway, so one of the things about beans is that they're starchy and they tend to be what I call salt and fat little piglets. They absorb it, and they're like, sometimes it's hard to season to get it where you want to get it. So they need acid and they need a little salt. They need love, right? So if somebody were to just give you edamame beans to eat and there was just nothing really going on, unless you're like eating them fresh right out of the pod, that's a little bit of a different experience. But when you're cooking with them, just know that you need to give them a little bit of love. But what I love about making a spread is that you can take this and use it. I mean, it's like sort of like a different way of it's different than guacamole, you know, but you can dunk vegetables in it. You can dunk things like jicama sticks in it. You can put this on crackers. You can put this on toast. And you've got protein and fiber in here, because avocados have a ton of fiber in them. Even though we think of foods with fiber as being a little bit like more like, you know, I don't know, more rougher and not smooth, but avocado. So this is like a lot of really good fiber, but we have to see if it tastes good. So I need one person to come up. Okay. See, and you didn't want me to put salt in, right? So, but no, really, because this is what we think of when we think about putting in salt, right? If it tastes good, you're like, I don't want it to taste salty, right? But in this case, I wanted to bring all the flavors together. So, like you said, it was just a little less acidic, and you got like the ginger and everything else. Like it integrated it. And did you notice that it was a little bit, it moved from the back to the front a little bit more?
Yeah. But I still actually prefer.
Okay, so there you go. So you can see salt changes things. Let's see. I have to taste. It tamed the citrus, but it brought up the rest of the flavors. So then you have to say it's preference, right? But either way, it's good to know. All right, you guys are dismissed. On to something else. Okay, great. I need somebody else. I need one person, and then I'll bring other people up to taste. But can I get one person? I want perfect. Come on up here. And preferably somebody who maybe not a fan of quinoa. Okay. So, all right. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Come right around here. So, I'm just going to ask you guys. So this is quinoa. Okay, quinoa. Quinoa. What color is this? Beige, brown, right? Kind of looks like cardboard. Doesn't look like cardboard, but it's basically brown, right? And there's not much going on in this bowl, okay? And oftentimes, and I don't know if you've heard this, but people will say, you know what? You have to eat your whole grains, and quinoa is like a really good grain, and it's got protein, and it's really healthy for you, and I really want you to eat quinoa. And you're like, and you look at this, and you're like, okay, I'll try it. So what I'm going to do is you're going to be kind of my little helper here, and you're going to taste it and keep your spoon. And nothing has been really done to this quinoa. Oh, that's the reaction I was waiting for. Okay. Right. It's like, so if I said to you, like, eat it, right? It's good for you. And you'd have one bite like that, and then you'd be like, I'm done. And then your definition of healthy food, right, might be changed because of that experience.
Most definitely.
Okay, right. So now the two of you are going to be up here, and we're going to do something. First thing is that quinoa needs olive oil. It needs a good fat because it does have a tendency to be a bit kind of grainy, right? And then the other thing that it needs is it definitely needs, is it tasting a little cardboardy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit of salt in here, okay? And then quinoa loves, again, our little acids, right? So I'm going to put in the lemon, and I'm going to put in some orange, because this is called orange pistachio quinoa. Okay, and I'm going to mix it up. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of cumin. See, it's getting a little bit more interesting now, right? And a little bit of coriander. Okay, and a little bit of pepper. Pepper is an interesting spice because it's like, you know, it's the fulcrum of the wheel. It makes all the other spices more easily absorbed by the body. It's a very synergistic spice. So that black pepper is like, anytime you can add just a couple of things of black pepper, yes, huge difference. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of orange zest in here. And then I'm going to add some scallions. Okay, so now we're adding some color, right? So it's not looking quite as brown, because every time we add color and flavor, we're getting, and I'm going to add, see, those raisins are coming back for a little bit of sweet and chewiness. And then some pistachio. So again, we're like creating some texture here. And then, just for fun, we're going to add some beautiful blood orange segments. Right? So now we've gone from sort of brown to something that's a little bit more colorful. And it's a little bit more of an invitation to say, you know, would you try this orange pistachio? Oh, and the most important thing, the mint. And let me tell you something. Of all the spices, I mean, it's herbs that you can use, mint is so wonderful and powerful and has a tremendous amount of unbelievable phytochemicals. I even know the names of some of them, and they're quite powerful. And if you just could incorporate mint into your life, and you grow it in your backyard, in a pot, anywhere, well, I can't say enough great things about it. So now we've really got something going. So now I'm going to give you the perfect little bites. Okay. So we've made progress.
Oh,
and,
most definitely.
And by at least having it this way, right, you wouldn't be like, if it were on your plate with some other protein on it, you wouldn't be like, ugh.
No.
Right.
I wouldn't.
Right. Great. Well, thank you. Very good. Okay, now we've got one more. One more. So I am a certified soup shaman, maven. I haven't graduated to shaman. You are a shaman. Yeah. Anyway, this is like, every cook has their thing, and mine is making soup. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I love soup because it's like giving somebody a culinary hug, you know? And if you're feeling really poorly, sometimes a little bit of a cashmere sweater soup, and this is called Bella's orange fennel carrot soup, and it's named after my first dog, Bella, who liked carrots more than she liked bacon. Probably the only dog that liked carrots more than bacon. And I would make this soup, and for every carrot that would go into the pot, Bella would get one, and she was like sort of a game. It was like playing, high five. So anyway, these types of soups, these blended soups, we used a Vitamix blender. So when you are blending a soup in a blender, whether it's a Vitamix or a Waring blender or whatever you have, you're whipping air into you're whipping air in. And when you do that, you get this just wonderful, smooth texture. Versus if you put this in a food processor and you processed it, you get a puree and it'd be grainy. You can also achieve this texture if you have an immersion blender. So you can, you don't have to have the Ferrari of blenders to make this work, okay? But if I were to give this soup to you, not blended, just kind of carrots floating in broth, you'd have a different perception of it than if I presented it this way. So now, we didn't do anything to this soup except make it pretty much as the recipe called for. And it needs a little help to get to yum. So this is sort of the last piece here. So I'd like to invite, how many people? 6. 6 people? 1, 2, now you've been up. 3, 4, 5, 6. Did you, who hasn't been up? Yes, come on up. Come on up. Okay. Okay. All right. So everybody's got to kind of come around here because I got to get this on your spoons. Okay. Okay. So over the pot. Okay, we're doing it campfire style. All right. One of the things it needs is, okay, so the reason why it needs salt is, where are you feeling it? Back here? Right, okay? It's back, it's back, it's back, right? So the flavors aren't integrated, and it's just hanging there in nowheresville. It's like you make a recipe, and it's like, what do I need? So there has been no salt added to this, okay, at all. None. Right, so it's got a lot of flavor, but it doesn't quite have enough, it's not integrated enough, and it's hanging in the back. So we're going to put, don't freak, this is about a half a teaspoon in this whole pot of soup, okay? The other thing that it needs, yes, it needs a little acid. So we're going to use a lemon. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 drops. Now, I'm going to do one more thing. I haven't broken out my drape of mape yet. Okay. So you're going to say, and why? Why are you using maple syrup in carrot soup, right? Because it needs, what sweet does is in cooking, right, is it can round out a flavor and harmonize. So I am going to use about a quarter of a teaspoon. Okay, spoons over here. Campfire time again. It's like I feel like the witch in the cauldron, over the cauldron, right? Okay, ready? Okay. 7, 10. It's got dropped. Oh, well, okay. All right. I've got one more trick up my sleeve that might change things. Okay, this is cashew cream. Remember we were talking about that fat? So all cashew cream is cashews, and you have the recipe, but it's cashews blended with water with a teeny bit of pinch of salt and a little lemon juice. That's it. And look at this, thank you, look at this amazing texture, right? So spoons up again. Okay, hang on. 10 plus yum. I get where you're coming from. On the whole, did we get it from being something that was okay, right, to something that was elevated, right? So that's the power of yum right there. So thank you all for participating. And I have time for just a few, wait, not even, do I?
No. Yes, okay. We have about 7-8 minutes for questions, but right before we do that, and Lisa, our other dietitian at the Cancer Center, is going to walk around and take questions from people, so thank you, Lisa. But I just wanted to mention, first want to say thank you all for coming tonight, and thanks for everybody that was participating on the live stream. If you want to get a flyer about the Food for Life program, or if you want to make a donation, we have some signed copies of one of Rebecca Katz's books, The Clean Soup. And if you make a donation, you may get a cookbook tonight to take home. And then also, like I said, the gift shop is selling some of her other books outside. So we'll spend the last 7-8 minutes taking questions. Thanks for coming.
Hi, I don't particularly like cooking with olive oil because I read so much things that, you know, the molecule breaks down when it's high heat, blah, 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 and it becomes carcinogenic. And I like cooking with coconut oil. What's your take on that?
So my take on that is there's been a lot of, there's a big misunderstanding about cooking with olive oil, that it takes a lot of, it takes a lot to get your burner up to 350 degrees, okay, which is the smoke point for olive oil. So I really like olive oil because of its nutritional profile. And coconut oil, I think, is fine in moderation, but it would not, it's still, even though, I mean, it's still a saturated fat. And even though it's a medium chain triglyceride, it's still a saturated fat. So, you know, I think I wouldn't use, I'm not one of those people that subscribe, I'm one of those people that subscribes to everything in moderation, including moderation. So coconut oil once in a while, fine in your cooking. Olive oil, unless you are doing some heavy-duty pan searing, you're not going to have a problem if you heat your pan first and then, just like the technique that I showed you tonight. Other possibilities are some grapeseed oil would be, that's a high heat oil. Another oil that's a high heat oil is avocado oil. So I just wouldn't be totally, and the other oil, the royal oil, which is ghee, which is just clarified butter, and with all the milk solids skimmed off, and it's like amazing. So anyway, that's I would vary. Yes.
Is there a substitute for cashews?
Sure. You could use almond, you could use pistachios, you could use pecan, you could use any nut. The thing about cashews is that they kind of mimic butter. Well, yes, it mimics the cream, right? That sense of cream. But cashew has this buttery taste. But if you're not a cashew fan, then you can, you could use really any other nut. Oh, okay. So all tree nuts?
No.
But cashews, yeah. So any other nut will do.
And then one other question, sorry. How long will it keep?
It keeps in the refrigerator for a week, but it keeps in your freezer for like 3 months. And I like to store my nuts, by the way, in my freezer. Because then, they last longer, they don't go rancid. So like this batch of cashew cream, I would divide it up into small little containers, label it, and put it in my freezer. So anytime I wanted it, I could, pull it out. But that's wheatgrass. Really, cashew cream, like a nut cream like this, does not. If anything, maybe you just put like a spritz of lemon to wake it up. But really, it retains a beautiful texture and its taste. So it really depends on what you're freezing that in that regard.
As I'm fighting my cancer, keeping my weight up, getting enough calories and enough protein in my diet has been a struggle because it means I have to like eat constantly throughout the day, particularly with a lot of fruits and vegetables and
Right.
things that have a lot of bulk. It's like, how can I possibly process that much? Is there anything that you recommend that has, that fits into this, but high protein, high calories?
Yeah, well, the one thing I will say are these nut creams, like pouring some, like when you're eating, to make sure that you've got some good added fat in there to just, because calories, because good fats are the most, the most calorically dense, right? So something like if you were eating like a thing of soup, those kinds of like pistachio cream, nut cream, avocados, anything that's like that is going to just add more calories, spoonful per spoonful. And the other option are, Greta, you probably would be able to speak more to this than me, but adding some good quality protein powders.
Or smoothies.
Or right, exactly. And smoothies are definitely another way. Like I call it the intravenous drip, like making a pitcher of smoothies with a lot of nutrient-dense stuff in there, but not trying to drink the whole thing, like not an 8-ounce glass, like, because you're right, you want to leave room.
This has been a presentation of the Helen Diller Family Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of California, San Francisco. Please visit us online at cancer.ucsf.edu.